Hello everyone and welcome to day 70 of my 100-day project. This is the last day I'm working in drawing oils for this series. So that went by super fast. Today was a rare day in that when I came to the surface today, I knew exactly what I wanted to paint. So I recently visualized what it would feel like to me to be in a world that was filled with opportunity, where abundance was just flowing to me. Like what was that visualization? What did that feeling look like? And the imagery that came to me was like a bee, like a bumblebee in this lush garden, and just this infinite flowers, like all these different choices, these different opportunities that would go on without end. And so today I thought, well, what if I painted a girl who looked like a bee in a garden, a flower garden that just sort of went off into infinity? So that was what I did today. And I started out, I didn't tone my canvas a single color. What I am doing is laying down sort of shadow colors, kind of like an underpainting, where I'm getting my shape in and the general structure of the painting in these shadow colors. And then I'm filling in the tooth of this board. It's a Centurion linen primed board, or oil primed linen board. So I'm filling in the tooth with my silicone brush and then going in and I'll layer in the color that I'm looking for afterwards. So the structure of the painting is in at this point, and I'm just sort of filling her in. I've had a bad habit lately of when I'm doing these figures, their arms are sticking out from their sides. So I noticed that a little bit later, like, oh, I have a tendency to do that. So that's a good thing for me to keep in mind there. But I've got some basic colors down, and now I'm working on the sky a little bit, adding some brilliant yellow extra pale to add in some like cloud shapes, and I add a little bit of titanium white in there as well. And then now what I'm doing is I'm toning down some of the saturation in the greens. So in this foreground, I'm laying in some turkey umber pale, which is actually a fairly dark, neutrally green color. So I'm overlaying that sap green that I had before to make it a little more neutral, a little darker. And then I'm using some of that celadon green over where I had that brighter malachite green in the background to tone that down as well. And now I'm adding in my flowers. So I'm starting out in the foreground with quinacridone magenta, and I'll add some quinacridone red as highlights here, just in the flowers in the front. So the flowers in the front are going to have more texture, they're going to be bigger, they're going to be warmer colored. The flowers in the background are going to be smaller, they're going to be less detailed, they're going to be cooler colored. So I've got that quinacridone magenta light that's fading off into the distance. And I'm adding in a little bit of that in the mid-tone. And now I'm adding in that quinacridone red to give some highlights to those magenta flowers and warm them up a little bit because they're in the foreground. I'm adding in some cadmium orange, which is super, super vibrant. So I'm really keeping that mostly in the foreground, a little bit in the midground, just to give more warmth and more detail and that lushness that I was going for. And I add a little bit of that cadmium yellow, which is what I've used for her hair and for her skirt. The yellow in the background is nickel yellow, which is a cooler yellow. And you can see them next to each other, how the nickel yellow looks like it's further in the background because it's cooler, and the cadmium yellow looks closer to the foreground because it's warmer. So this is where temperature can really come into play and support you. I'm adding in a little bit of that cadmium orange into the sky just to bring the colors together, harmonize them a little bit. And I bring that orange down into the horizon line, and I don't really like it. There's not enough contrast with her hair. So I'm bringing in some cadmium red into the sky to give a little more pink and bring some of that red upwards. Cleaning off, adding in a little bit of that magenta over that yellow in the background. I want to bring more contrast to her hair. So I want to darken that up there. And then I'm putting a little bit in her skirt. What I'm noticing now and what's bothering me is her skirt and her hair are competing for attention, for focal point. And I really wanted it to be more of her hair because I wanted it to be about this idea of this vision, this infinite land in front of you. And so I want the focal point to come upwards a little bit more. And it hasn't occurred to me yet how to fix that. So I keep kind of messing with her hair. I try to make her hair lighter, and I try to make her skirt darker and a little more neutral. So I add in some of the pinks and some of the oranges. And then I took this Egyptian, or I keep saying Egyptian, it's ancient gold, thinking, aha, I'll add some gold and that surely will help. But it didn't, because it just didn't lay on there with quite the same level of intensity. So now I'm bringing some of that Provence blue that was in the sky into her clothing to give that Paynes gray dark color some interest. And then I'm adding some cerulean blue at the horizon line, which is a very pale blue, to try and bring some contrast to her head. And it helps a little bit, but it's still not enough. So when I can't figure out what to do, I go and work on a separate part of the painting. So I'm like, okay, she needs her wings. And I didn't want big, thick lines. I wanted them to look transparent. So I used my skewer to just scratch into the painting. And I felt like they needed to be a little bit darker. And so I used my silicone brush. And I kind of wish I hadn't, and that I had just left them very subtle, because the outline is a little thicker than I wanted. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll add some of that gold, and the gold didn't lay over really well. I thought I'd add some titanium white. That didn't lay over really well. And so what ended up happening is the outline around her wings just ended up getting a little bit thicker, more thick than I would have liked. And I bring in a little bit of that Provence blue just where it meets her body. I want to darken that a little bit, but I don't want to lose it. I just want to add dimension. So now I'm going in, I'm trying to lighten up her hair, thinking, well, I just need to make that lighter and it'll stand out more. So I'm adding in a little bit of color to give some of that dimension back where I may have wiped it away with that cadmium yellow. But look at how bright her skirt is. It's just, I haven't figured it out yet. I'll get there. So I'm scratching again, not knowing what to do. So let me go mess with the wings. And then when I took it down, I thought, well, she's done. This is where she is. I took my photos and I took it off. I took the camera down, and it occurred to me what I needed to fix. And so unfortunately, I did that off camera. But you'll see here in a second. What I ended up doing, what I noticed as soon as I took it off was, aha, her skirt needs to have some stripes in it. She's a bee. So I'll add the stripes into her skirt. That makes the light part of her hair stand out more. And I got rid of the yellow stripes in her tights. So that calmed down her legs a little bit, and it took down the contrast that was down there. But it still doesn't solve the issue with the focal point. If you squint your eyes, the contrast between the stripes on her skirt and her skirt is kind of where my eye goes. So I think the way that I can solve that is by putting in antenna on her head. I wasn't going to, but if I do, then those dark lines will really make the focal point move up. And I really think I need to do it. The only reason why I didn't was I wasn't sure how I was going to get such fine lines with that drawing oil stick. But as I'm sitting here editing, it occurs to me what I can do is I can just use oil paint. I can go in with a really thin liner brush and some oil paint and easily add some lines in there. So it wouldn't be using the drawing oils, but it would still be using the oil paint in order to do that. So I might do that. I'm not quite sure. The drawing oils have wax in them, and I don't know if I could. I could add solvent and try and break it down a little bit, but I don't want it to be too liquidy. So I don't know. I'm going to sit with that one. So stay tuned on what this ends up looking like. But this is where she is for now. So that is day 70, the last day of this 10-day stint with drawing oils. Off to gouache tomorrow. Hold on to your hats for that one. I don't know how that one's going to go, so we'll find out. I hope you're doing well. Take care of you, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.